Hi, this is Pastor John with Thursday's episode of What Was Jesus Up To During Holy Week? Well, today is Thursday. Thursday's a big day because Thursday's the day that everyone in Jerusalem was preparing for the Passover meal. Now, Passover was the annual feast in which Jews everywhere remembered that God, long ago, through Moses, had delivered them out of slavery to Pharaoh, out into freedom and new life. And they became God's people with a mission, with a purpose. And they were then led into the Promised Land. So Passover was always that great festival when they remember that God saves, that God redeems them out of slavery. And then Jesus is with his disciples in the upper room for a Passover meal. Now they had gone out and they made preparations. They found the place to have the meal. They rounded up the food. And it was there during that meal that so many important things happened. First, Jesus sets the tone for the meal. When in John's Gospel, chapter 13, we read that Jesus took a basin of water and a towel, bent down, and then washed his disciples' feet. Now, the disciples were uncomfortable with this, but Jesus insisted. That is why he has come, to be a servant. And that's so much like Jesus, to make the point that he has come not to be served, but to serve, and then to give his life as a ransom for many. And so there it is that Jesus takes on the role of a servant very clearly. And he tells the disciples, you'll be blessed if you serve one another. And it's so true. There's so much blessing in being able to serve and to give ourselves to another. Next, Jesus and his disciples, they celebrate the Passover meal. And it is in that meal that Jesus takes bread. And there he does a couple of things that no one had ever done before. First, he takes the bread and he breaks the bread. And he looks into his disciples' eyes and says, this bread is my body broken for you. Do this every time you eat of it and remember me. And then after supper, he took the cup of wine and he blessed it and gave thanks to God, gave it to his disciples and said to them, this is my blood, the blood of the new covenant that is poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this, and every time you drink of it, remember me. And so we remember this as the beginning of what we now call the Lord's Supper, or Holy Communion, where we gather as a body of Christ and we receive the sacrament, the holy mystery of God's grace poured out, Jesus becoming so real for us and so present for us. And we remember. It was after that supper that Jesus then took his disciples outside the city, down the Kidron Valley, and to the base of the Mount of Olives, there at the Garden of Gethsemane, which was a grove of olive trees. And many of those trees are still there today, or some of those trees are still there today. It's there that Jesus prayed that prayer, Father, let this cup pass from me. Let this cup pass from me, this cup of death. But nonetheless, he ended his prayer with, not my will, but your will be done. Jesus is committed to being faithful to the Father. And then it's there that he sees the torches at a distance of the soldiers coming to arrest him, and there they arrived, and there was Judas, the one who had gone out at the Last Supper to betray Jesus, and here is Judas. Jesus is arrested. He goes willingly. His disciples scatter, but Jesus goes with them, and there he is taken to the house of the high priest, where he is condemned by the ruling assembly, and there he is left in chains. And that's the end of what Jesus was up to on Thursday. More, of course, happens Friday, which we'll turn to tomorrow. But for now, I hope you've gained something from hearing about Jesus on Thursday, that Jesus was willing to do anything it took to bring us home to God. He's willing to serve us, wash our feet, but he's also willing to wash our souls clean. And that will come on the next day at the cross. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But as for now, thank you for joining us for this episode of What Was Jesus Up To During Holy Week this Thursday. Bye for now, and we'll see you tomorrow.